Namo Buddhaya. Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to our Sutta study program. As usual, we're going to begin with a few minutes of silent meditation together to sort of arrive and settle in the space. So just about 10 minutes of silent sitting together. Namo Buddhaya. Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. This is our Sutta study program. And see some messages in the chat from a newcomer. Welcome to all newcomers. And yes, we usually start with just a few minutes of silent meditation together. If anyone is very new to meditation, they're welcome to come to our Sunday morning classes. We have meditation instruction and guidance at that time. 9 a.m. California time on Sundays. And this then is our Sutta study program. But we like to give people a chance just to sort of sit together, settle in, breathe, come to be present. I think we started doing this originally to allow those working in the kitchen here to finish up the cleanup. They were always rushing at this time. And we thought, oh, just give everyone a chance to arrive. So hopefully we've all arrived. We're here. We're ready for Sutta study. And well, this is the last day of our winter retreat. It certainly doesn't feel like winter here anymore. It's quite warm out here, actually, in the sala. So seems like time to emerge, but also time to reflect on where we've been these past 2 months, what we've been looking at, what we've been working with, and where we are now. So our sutta today will sort of be, I guess, on the theme of what's it all about? Why did we do this? Why are we still doing this? Before we get to the sutta, I guess I'd actually like to ask you, why are you here? Why did you come today? What did you hope to gain? What's your motivation? And then we'll see how that compares to the motivation of the particular sutta that we're going to look at today. Anyone want to share? Yes, Chintana, please.
Hi, I'm here to learn Dhamma from great Dhamma teachers and to be with my Sangha, and feeling better after a couple of months of surgery. Can feel like I can actually learn. Yeah, it's been a couple of difficult months. I had a really difficult surgery, and so I'm really excited to be here today and to be present and to be in the moment and to have got the meditation earlier this morning. And I'm just so happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Looking for happiness, it sounds like. That seems reasonable. Yeah. Okay. I see a message in the chat saying, join today to observe and learn more about the practice of Buddhism since you're new. All right. Another newcomer. Welcome. Anyone else? What's the goal of your practice? What do you think you might gain from being here? Yes, Daniel.
I guess not to put too fine a point on it, but I think to um, uh, lessen and eventually end suffering. I think finding peace, happiness, and that these classes feel like they're a little, I don't know, drop in the bucket each time. It fills up a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And so wanting to keep doing that.
Too? Yeah, okay. You have a theme, be happy, reduce suffering. See some more messages in the chat. Keep in mind meditation and be in community with Sangha. Learn Buddha's teaching and relieve the life suffering. Okay. So, connection, relieving suffering. All right. Well, how do we do that? How do we relieve suffering? Daniel.
Practice the Eightfold Path.
Practice the Eightfold Path. Yes, yes. that is what the Buddha told us. We should practice the Eightfold Path.
Getting rid of defilements.
Getting rid of defilements, absolutely. Anything else? No? All right. How do we get rid of defilements? I see a message in the chat that says, understand the cause of suffering and getting rid of the cause. Yes.
Mm.
So yeah, Daniel mentioned, so we've got all Four Noble Truths mentioned now, right? People were talking about suffering. Daniel mentioned the Eightfold Noble Path, which is the way out of suffering. And Padmini has said understanding the cause and getting rid of the cause. Those are the second and third Noble Truths. So yes, realizing the Noble Truths. Coming to understand something that we didn't understand before. It's really what this path is about. Okay. So then, next question, how do we come to understand?
Awareness.
Awareness, right, hopefully. Okay, maybe that's enough of that. Let's go to our sutta. And hang on, find the right window here. All right. So, sutta with Prince Abhaya. Okay. So I have heard at one time the Buddha was staying near Rajagaha on the Vulture's Peak mountain. Then Prince Abhaya went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side, and said to him, Sir, Purana Kassapa, that is another spiritual teacher of the time, not in the Buddha's teaching, Purana Kassapa says this, there is no cause or reason for not knowing and not seeing. Not knowing and not seeing have no cause or reason. There is no cause or reason for knowing and seeing. Knowing and seeing have no cause or reason. What does the Buddha say about this? So the other teacher is saying either you know or you don't. Either you see or you don't. And there's not really anything to be done about it. It sounds like just luck somehow that some people know and see and others don't. And yeah, this question of like, what is the purpose of practice? What do we hope to gain? Well, yes, alleviation from suffering, but if that comes through understanding, then we hope that we can develop our understanding, develop our knowing and seeing. But here this teacher is saying, no, we can't. It just is what it is. Either you do or you don't. So Prince Abhaya has this question. And the Buddha, of course, does not agree. We can probably guess that in advance. Prince, the Buddha says, there are causes and reasons for not knowing and not seeing. Not knowing and not seeing have causes and reasons. There are causes and reasons for knowing and seeing. Knowing and seeing have causes and reasons. Okay, so it's not random. It's for a reason if we know and see and understand something, and it's for a reason if we don't. Prince asks, but sir, what is the cause and reason for not knowing and not seeing? How do not knowing and not seeing have causes and reasons? All right, so before we look at the Buddha's answer, what do you think? What is the cause or reason for not knowing and not seeing? Why do we get confused? Daniel.
I cheated and I already read this sutta, but
Oh,
I
that's
won't
not
give
cheating. That's good.
I won't give necessarily that answer because it feels like it. But I think ignorance, really, grasping, is at the root of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You want to say more about that? Grasping for what? How does that relate to not knowing and not seeing?
Grasping at that which is impermanent, and the attendant suffering from inevitably losing that, grasping at a self, grasping at an identity,
Mm-hmm.
um, leads one to misunderstand how things really are. And by misunderstanding that, one suffers.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So ignorance, yes. Ignorance is certainly a cause for not seeing, not knowing. And ignorance is also a cause for grasping. And grasping, I think you're right, contributes back, because if we're running around after something that's not true, we're putting all our energy into looking at that and not looking at what is true. And that perpetuates ignorance. Okay, we can go ahead. So the Buddha's answer: how do not knowing and not seeing have causes and reasons? There's a time when the heart is overcome and mired in sensual desire, without truly in knowing and seeing the escape from sensual desire that has arisen. This is a cause and reason for not knowing and not seeing. This is how not knowing and not seeing have causes and reasons. Okay. Similarly, for the other 5 hindrances. Furthermore, there's a time when the heart is overcome and mired in ill will, dullness and drowsiness, restlessness and remorse, doubt, without truly in knowing and seeing the escape from doubt that has arisen. This is a cause and reason for not knowing and not seeing. And this is how not knowing and not seeing have causes and reasons. So the prince asks, "Sir, what is the name of this exposition of the teaching?" And the Buddha gives the name. These are called the hindrances, prince. We've probably already learned this, many of us, but yes, Buddha says these are the hindrances. This is an exposition of the teaching. And Prince Abhaya can see it. He says, "Indeed, blessed ones, these are hindrances. Indeed, Holy One, these are hindrances. Overcome by even a single hindrance, you wouldn't truly know and see, let alone all 5 hindrances." So he's impressed. So hopefully in our practice, we have been practicing during this time with awareness, with kindness, etc. And this is very much a practice of trying to know and see, right? Putting awareness on whatever is arising and trying to know it, trying to understand it. But then what happens when we try to do this practice in an extended way? What is our experience when we try to be receptively aware of everything all the time? Does it work?
The hindrances arise.
Daniel? Yes, the hindrances arise. Probably all of us have experienced that. That is very normal. That the hindrances arise when we try to be aware all the time. That we will experience these things. We will experience the heart being become and mired in sensual desire, ill will, dullness and drowsiness, restlessness and remorse, or doubt. Is that because we were practicing awareness? No? Okay, that's good. Sometimes people can think so. like, oh, I started doing this meditation and my mind is just like, oh, such a mess. I'm so angry. I'm so restless. I should just go do something else. I shouldn't meditate. This is too much. I need to distract myself with something else. Right? No, the hindrances aren't arising because of the meditation. It's the awareness is coming because of the meditation. These things are with us most of the time if we're not aware. Right? We want something, or we want to get rid of something, or we want to be somewhere else, or we want to just collapse, or we don't know what to do. These are very much just our normal state much of the time if we're not practicing meditation, if we're not practicing awareness. So then, meditation, awareness helps us to see, helps us at least a little bit to come out of this, at least to know what's going on with these. Even if we can't see past them or see through them at the moment, at least we know that they're there. So being able to see them as a hindrance. Yeah, Daniel?
I think you're talking about this made me think of when meditating in a particular posture, it's common that I'll experience some kind of physical discomfort, achiness or whatever, and, notice it and continue to practice. But then I'll sit in the exact same posture and either watch TV or talk to a friend and could do that for hours with zero physical discomfort, not even noticing it and realizing, oh, right, it's the awareness, it's the mindfulness that's making me notice, hey, I have this little soreness here or whatever. Makes me think of what you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all in how we're attending. Can be aware of that pain and find it painful and want to get away from it. We can distract ourselves to get away from it. Um, you know, it's also possible in meditation that you get into states where, for other reasons, you don't feel that, where the physical pains can subside because the mind is more purified and focused on something else. But yeah, seeing the various states of the mind and how it reacts to the things, you just sort of see, well, the impermanence of that. You see how things, yeah, just how it changes, how knowledge and seeing changes depending how you attend. And get a very, visceral, true sense of that through meditation. So yeah, anyway, meditation helps us to see that these things are actually hindrances, that they're not our normal state, or I mean, they are our normal state, but they're not like the only thing that could be possible. They're not, just the correct way of being because it's all we know. It's like you have to be able to see them as you can even get away. Right? That they might be possible to abandon them. You have to see that they're getting in your way in the first place. Shakti, yes.
Hi. Well, I feel inspired to contemplate what happens in meditation. There are times it feels open and spacious, and then there'll be like a crowd, like a herd of, is it a herd of horses? What is it when it's a lot of horses?
Yeah,
a stampede.
Yeah, it can be a herd or a stampede.
Yeah. And the mind will be besotted with that, a metaphor for a lot of images, a lot of emotions, and then it clears. It changes.
Hey, yes, absolutely. Is there a reason that it changes?
Well, okay, so this is a really good inquiry for me because I don't know if there's if there's like causality and identity. I'm not sure where they lie in all of this, but by sitting less stampedes,
Mhm.
fewer. And was it an I who even chose to sit? I'm not really sure. But it seems to help. Whoever is the operator here, it seems to help.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. It's possible to make effort, whether there's an I or not. There can be effort, there can be energy to do something good and wholesome.
Mm, that's helpful.
Um,
The way you're framing it, yeah, thank you.
yeah, so we make effort. And yeah, we do usually find that, if you sit long enough, um, something's going to change. One way or another, something's going to change. And, you know, our effort is not just to sort of grit our teeth and sit through it for its own sake. The effort is to sort of be able to see as it arises and as it passes away, and at least not to feed it,
Mhm.
right? Not to allow it to grow, but to sort of let it exhaust itself, let it run out of fuel, um, understand how you can remove the fuel, uh, understand how it can go through its process and just peter out eventually. And as you learn to stop feeding it, then it will, as you say, it will become less. The stampedes will become smaller and less frequently, gradually. It's a slow process, but certainly it's something that I think meditators do experience over time, that those stampedes become less and less frequent, as you're describing. So,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you for your comments. All right. So, anyway, so the prince, um, he understands this. He understands these things as hindrances, and understands how those are blocking knowing and seeing. Okay. But he wants to know, okay, then how do I know and see? What is the cause, sir? The cause and reason for knowing and seeing. How do knowing and seeing have causes and reasons? All right. And someone who didn't read ahead in the sutta, what do you think? Uh, 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 what's your guess? Anybody? No? Have you ever known or seen anything in your meditation? Yes? Mary Joy's, let's see. Can't hear you, Mary Joy. No, no, you're muted still.
There we go. I did read the sutta in advance,
Okay.
but I'm not going to rely on what I read. I just thought, well, if you relax,
Hmm.
if you
Yeah.
relax, then something can happen. You can notice something.
Hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's true. If we're kind of stressed and like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that, then we get all caught up in that and might not see what's going on around us. We get like tunnel vision on that. Um, Definitely true. Whereas if we can sort of relax, look around, then there's opening to have some choice about what you're paying attention to, have some choice about what you're knowing and seeing. So yeah. And yes, that relaxation also is part of this practice of receptive awareness, as we've been talking about it over this time. All right. And yes, I think even though it's not exactly how the Buddha phrased it, I think it's part of what his answer is. So let's go ahead and look at his answer. What is the cause of knowing and seeing? Have causes and reasons. It's when a mendicant develops the awakening factor of mindfulness, which relies on seclusion, fading away, and cessation, and ripens as letting go. They truly know and see with a mind that has developed the awakening factor of mindfulness. This is a cause and reason for knowing and seeing. This is how knowing and seeing have causes and reasons. And similarly with the other 6 awakening factors. Furthermore, a mendicant develops the awakening factor of investigation of principles, energy, rapture, tranquility, immersion, that's samadhi, and equanimity, which rely on seclusion fading away and sensation and ripen as letting go. They truly know and see with a mind that has developed the awakening factor of equanimity. This is a cause and reason for knowing and seeing. And this is how knowing and seeing have causes and reasons. So yeah, these awakening factors, I'm not sure, I know you have studied these in some depth, and seems like, let's go on here. This is new to him, but he can recognize it. He says, "Sir, what is the name of this exposition of the teaching?" "These are called the awakening factors, Prince." And again, he can see, "Indeed, Blessed One, these are awakening factors. Indeed, Holy One, these are awakening factors. Endowed with even a single awakening factor, you would truly know and see, let alone all 7 awakening factors." And so he says, "When climbing Mount Vulture's peak, I became fatigued in body and mind, but this has now faded away, and I've comprehended the teaching." So again, he can recognize these are awakening factors. He can see something about it as soon as it's pointed out, just as he could see something about it as soon as it was pointed out when it came to the hindrances. So yeah, so let's look at this list, whether it's new to you or whether it's old news, something you're already well familiar with. The awakening factors: mindfulness, investigation of principles, energy, rapture, tranquility, immersion, which is Bhante Sujato's translation for samadhi, also sometimes called concentration or stillness or serenity. You know, probably, maybe easiest just to call it samadhi. But and equanimity. Right? So I think Mary Joy was mentioning relaxation. I think certainly the tranquility here is that's an instance of relaxation. Actually, there's the 3: tranquility, immersion, and equanimity that are on the side of calm, on the side of yeah, relaxation here. Although it's also balanced on the other side by investigation of principles, energy, and rapture, piti, which are, imbuing this mind with different kinds of energy. So this is classically taught, or the Buddha taught it. He said that there's, these, out of the 7, there's 3 that are energizing and 3 that are calming. And those are to be kept in balance. And there's one that's always useful that you can't have too much of, which is mindfulness, the first one. And the mindfulness is what helps you to sort of keep them all balanced and, keeping the mind steady. So it's not collapsing because of too much calm. You just kind of like go to sleep. And it's not getting going with a lot of clarity, with a lot of strength. So yeah, if we've been agitated, we need relaxation. If we've been collapsed, we need a little energy. And together, these factors keep us upright, keep our minds clear, and they allow us to see. allow us to see things that we couldn't see before. Yes, Daniel.
I think one thing I think about is with regards to the enlightenment factors is how they're like causes of one another, like dominoes. So rather than each one being its own separate individual task to sort of be completed, if you will, that mindfulness, when developed properly, naturally leads to the next one, which naturally leads to the next one, and so on and so forth. So there's a kind of flow to them versus having to struggle through each one.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So there's a way in which they're linear like that, where you start with mindfulness and this is going on around you. And then it naturally leads to investigation, right? Investigation means sort of, now that you're aware of your experience, well, you start to think about what's going on with it. You start to investigate, how does it work? What's happening here? Is this actually helpful for me or not? This thing that's happening, this thing that I'm doing. The sort of stepping back to a position of just sort of awareness as opposed to, you know, engaging kind of just according to your hindrances. If you've abandoned the hindrances, you've stepped back into this space of awareness, then you can look clearly and be like, okay, what's happening here, really? Is what I'm doing helpful? Or do I need to step back? Because it's harmful. So we investigate. And as it becomes clear to us, you know, what's helpful and what's harmful, what's going on, what's the true qualities of our experience of things, then as we start to get a handle on that, we can feel energy. Like, oh, this thing I'm doing is actually really counterproductive. Like, ooh, why am I doing that? Then you have the energy to step back and be like, oh, let me get out of that. If you find out that you're in the muck somehow, you're going to take energy, apply energy to come out of that. Or if you see that something is good, that it's helpful, that it's bringing you happiness, then there's going to be energy to maintain that or to move towards that if you're not already there, right? The energy is to, you know, maintain the awareness sort of and move towards what you know through your investigation to be more helpful. So this energy arises that inspires you to make effort. And then effort, energy leads to joy, rapture, piti. So this joy, you know, that's what they describe, sort of like a flow state. You're just kind of, because of your applying energy, because you're keeping balance through your mindfulness and your investigation, like you've worked hard to get up to the top of the hill on your bike, and then you get to just coast down. And there's something joyful about that, something exhilarating about that. Right? Which then, you know, leads to calm eventually, because you don't have to be putting in a lot of effort, a lot of agitation. It's just like freely flowing, and then that's where the calm comes in. And calm, concentration, stillness, absorption, immersion. These things can arise from a deep calm. We've cleared out all the hindrances. I've been energized by these positive factors, positive energizing factors. And then that leads into the calm and the deep stillness and clarity of mind. And then that being impermanent, that's where the equanimity comes in. You see that even that deep calm, deep stillness of mind is not steady. There are blips. It comes and goes. But the mind can still, even just knowing those things, be at ease with them. It can know and see clearly. And that leads to equanimity, because you just understand it is the way it is. And there's things you can do about it, and there's things you can't do about it. And so the deep clarity about what you can do and what you can't do means you can stop worrying about all the stuff you can't do. Why worry? There's no use to it if you can't actually do anything. And at the same time, it gives you clarity about what you can do. And also you've got the energy and the trust and the faith that you can do it. So you also don't have to worry about that. You just do it. That's sort of this engaged equanimity. You can meet anything at all. So yes, there is this sense in which there's a progression, starting with mindfulness, going to equanimity, and then there's also the way in which the different factors can be somewhat independent. You can focus on one or another at a given time. You can see if the mind is going like too low in energy, that it's falling in one way, or it's getting too much in energy going the other way. There's both ways of expounding this teaching. One is the sort of linear way, and one is the way of keeping in balance, the way of the different factors being things you can sort of work with independently to a degree. Okay, let's see in the chat. Okay, I see Mary Joy. We get tired and bad habits take over. That was from a little while ago. Yeah. So anyway, these are the awakening factors. And there's these different ways to look at it. Now I want to talk about this part. So we develop these awakening factors, and it has this extra part, the awakening factor of mindfulness, which relies on seclusion, fading away, and cessation, and ripens as letting go. So what is this about? Relying on seclusion. So seclusion here, there's different ways, different kinds of seclusion. There's the kind of seclusion where you go to a monastery and maybe you're secluded from the outside world a little bit. There's varying degrees of how much seclusion you may have in a monastery, but at least you're stepping out from some things. You're stepping into an environment where people are, practicing with precepts, and they're dedicated to the Dhamma in some way, hopefully. There's deeper degrees of seclusion. People go on retreats. People at least fantasize about going and living in caves. Not that many of them actually do, but a lot of people fantasize about that. So there's that physical seclusion. But there's also the mental seclusion, which is, coming out of hindrances, coming out of defilements, being secluded, wholesome states of mind. So, yeah, when we develop mindfulness, this is one of the conditions. If we want, this is part of the standard description of the jhanas, actually, of the states of immersion samadhi. It says, quite secluded from sense pleasures, secluded from unwholesome state of mind, one enters and dwells in the first jhana. It's part of the standard jhana description. And we have to come out of these hindrances. We have to come away from them. as a prerequisite for being able to develop these more wholesome qualities, starting with mindfulness, going up to the jhanas, going up to all of the awakening factors and awakening itself. We have to come out of these unwholesome states of mind somehow. So the awakening factor of mindfulness is relying on seclusion. There's also, it's relying on fading away. Fading away here is viraga. So viraga, it does mean fading away. It means, it's the word that you would use for like the dye fading out of a cloth. That would be viraga. But it's also often translated as like dispassion, detachment. Here in the dictionary we have fading of desire. So raga is passion, viraga is dispassion. So yeah, if we're caught up in passion, then can we be mindful in the midst of that? Not really, right? I mean, there are certain practices like in the Vajrayana or something where people will work with situations where they would ordinarily experience passion, and try to be mindful in the midst of that, try to, their practices in the midst of that. And I'm neither recommending nor disrecommending those practices. But I think the point of those practices is that it's difficult, right? That it's difficult to be in such a situation and not be caught, right? It's difficult to be in a situation that would be inspiring passion and not to get sort of really involved in that passionate state of mind. I think it's not impossible, but it's difficult. Yes, Shakti.
I was wondering if the most skillful thing to do might be to just watch, like rather than, making passion arise and then watching it, I mean, there's plenty of, I don't know, hindrance moments around.
Yes, I agree with you. Yeah, so this practice that I was referring to is actually, it's from a different tradition than we're in. It's from like the Vajrayana, like the Tibetan Himalayan practices, especially. They're not all of them. It's a diversity in practice there also. But yeah, it is different from the teachings that we see in these suttas usually. Say, come out of that situation before you try to develop the mindfulness, because it is so challenging. Because it is so challenging when you're in a situation that inspires passion to not be passionate. And the passion is the thing that gets us caught. So yeah, somehow we have to come out of that. We have to come out of whatever is causing us to get trapped, get hooked. That hook of passion needs to come out one way or another, whether it's through physically removing yourself from the situation, or somehow developing the mind such that the mind can unhook itself even in the situation. I think both of those are possible. And, I think physically removing yourself is most of the time a skillful means for that. And something I would recommend. I think there's danger in putting yourself in deliberately putting yourself in a situation that would inspire passion for the purpose of coming out of passion is it's fraught with danger. I think might not be impossible, but it's tricky. Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. One needs to be careful when they're looking at something like that type of practice, because those practices developed in India and then in the surrounding areas, and then as Buddhism spread, members of those groups, would become Buddhists. And then sometimes they brought their practices into Buddhism. So that's sort of how a lot of the changes going from the Theravadan to the Mahayana to the Tantric type practices kind of became schools of Buddhism. Buddha very often talks about guarding the senses so that those type of thoughts and things don't arise. And finally, when you get to right effort and you get to where you can maintain only wholesome thoughts, in other words, skillful and beneficial thoughts, that's when you're prepared to really sit down and start contemplating things in terms of the seventh path factor. So from the sixth path factor, you go to the seventh of mindfulness, and then eventually you go to samadhi. And that's basically what's being talked about here. You start with mindfulness, and then it transmutes into basically the four jhanas, ending in the fourth jhana of equanimity. And you're not enlightened at that point, but you've attained a certain amount of knowing and seeing. And at each one of these levels, you get a little deeper knowing and seeing, a little deeper knowing and seeing, a little deeper, more thorough knowing and seeing until you get here. And then from here, you can go on, because this is now the eighth path factor of samadhi. You can go on to the two additional path factors, which are the two that actually really lead to nibbana. So I would be a little cautious. I know the Bhikkhuni probably doesn't want to say something too controversial, but I have no trouble saying controversial things. Although I do try to preface it and explain, why I'm saying these things. But anyways, that's my view.
No, thank you, Richard. So yeah, I do want to. I don't want to be disrespectful to entire other traditions, which I think have their place, and that I think there is legitimate practice within those traditions. I also think that that kind of practice is not what we see in the suttas. It's not what we see in the early Buddhist teaching, and I think it's not necessary. And I think it does have some inherent dangers attached to it. So trying to walk a line in how I'm talking about it. And so thank you, Richard, for helping to clarify that. So I think what one experience is, somebody could have an idea that if you're practicing renunciation, that somebody goes to a monastery and they're cutting off all their entertainments and all their sensual pleasures of various sorts. And maybe they're just sort of sitting there in the monastery feeling tormented day and night by the lack of sensual pleasures, right? Somebody who has not practiced renunciation might assume that that's the case, right? And it's also not unheard of that somebody does come to a monastery and that they feel tormented by the lack of sensual pleasures. That also happens. It just sort of depends depends on the person, depends on how they've practiced before. But I think what I have experienced myself, and what I think the Buddha is telling us is sort of a normal case, is that if you do go and spend time secluded from those sensual pleasures, the interest in them will just naturally fade over time. Maybe not right away, maybe not your first week in the monastery, but at some point in your first 20 years in the monastery, it's going to happen that you're just not really interested anymore. Even if you go out in the world and you see that thing that seemed so desirable before, you go out and it's just like, oh, that's just like, no interest. Like the hook is gone because you've learned to live without it. You've learned that you can be fine without it. gotten rid of the confusion that I need that, right? You know, you don't need it anymore. And that's how dispassion can come about. That's how seclusion leads to dispassion. So, and I think that is what we see the Buddha saying in these suttas, in the Pali Canon. That's the kind of practice that he's recommending, much more than trying to put yourself in a place of passion to sort of like test yourself or whatever. So I am not like 100% absolutely rejecting those practices, but I'm saying that, you know, I don't think that they're necessary because these other practices can have the same effect over time. So seclusion, fading away, cessation. If you ever see that you've been meditating and you know, you were so angry or so caught up in craving for something that you didn't have, that you sat long enough and it just stopped, sort of like Shakti was saying with the stampedes fading away, like you feel like you're being trampled by the horses, but then eventually, you know, those hoofbeats are off in the distance, they're quiet, they're gone. It stopped. And you can see that stopping, you can catch it. Then that's a source of faith. That's a source of sort of trust that we're not condemned to be caught up in the stampedes, right? That cessation is possible of these things. So these factors, you know, they rely on the seclusion, on the fading away of, on the dispassion, and on the seeing of cessation, on the seeing that these hindrances can end. And then they ripen as letting go. So if these awakening factors are developed highly, you know, then these are very positive things, right? These sound good: energy, rapture, joy, tranquility. These sound like very positive things that you want to have in your mind. And the point is that they fill the mind, that the mind doesn't have to go looking for anything else that it doesn't have. It feels complete, it feels satisfied, content. And if the mind is content, it's complete, then letting go. You don't need anything else. You don't need to hang on to whatever you were hanging on to. So this sort of space of contentment, clarity, clear seeing, it's what allows for letting go when you develop these very highly. So these factors rely on seclusion from the hindrances and other unwholesome states of mind. They rely on dispassion. They rely on seeing things fade away. And they ripen as letting go. And this is a cause for knowing and seeing. Okay, question in the chat. Cessation of sense pleasures, is that the equivalent of arhatship? So complete cessation of sensual desire would be one of the factors of non-return, anagami. So the second to last stage of enlightenment, they've completely lost interest in sense pleasures. There's no more desire and there's no more aversion. There's still some subtle craving for, you know, like for the fine material spheres, and there's still a little restlessness, and there's still some conceit. It's not complete awakening, but it's pretty close. It's the next to last on the way is cessation of desire for sense pleasures. It doesn't necessarily mean cessation of sense pleasures themselves. Somebody who is an anagami could still have pleasant feelings related to the senses, agreed for that at that point. So, it's a long way away for most of us, but it is possible. It's also not quite the end of the road, even though it's a good distance down the road. Cessation of the desire, you meant to say. Yes, cessation of the desire would come at the time of non-return, anagami, third stage of awakening. All right. So anyway, so we did get through this sutta. I want to just look at this last line here, and then I have a follow-up sutta, just in case there's not more discussion about this one. So yes, we can develop, we can abandon the hindrances and we can develop the awakening factors, and these are the causes for our knowing and seeing. And I like this. He says, while climbing up the mountain to see you, I felt tired, but this has faded away. So here's your illusion, climbing up the mountain, the fading away of the hindrances of tiredness. And I think also the arising of awakening factors, right? Comprehending the teaching. You can sort of feel the joy that has come up with this Dhamma teaching in Prince Abhaya. And it can have this effect that, that even in the body, the aches and pains fall away because of this joy. Sort of like we were saying with Daniel before, yes, for a while you become more aware of the fatigue and the aches and pains and everything, but it leads to this kind of joy or ease with it, at least ease with it. All right. So this is basically the goal. This is how we've been developing these factors through awareness. The point is to develop what's wholesome, to make space for this knowing and seeing to arise. I want to go to the, okay, Richard, yes.
Thank you, Anne.
We go on.
Just as in this series here, each one of these lead to knowing and seeing deeper and deeper until the end. And there's actually a note in the commentary that this end, where he translated, and I've comprehended the teaching, they say that he achieves stream entry. Now, this Abhaya, knew the Buddha, and I'm sure he'd gone to him many times, for teachings and stuff. And but he had this doubt in the sutra because this other famous teacher had said, "Oh, there's actually no cause and condition." So he wanted the Buddha to relieve that doubt. And in the course of the sutta, that doubt gets relieved, and he realizes, no, there are causes, conditions. So there's also, before this, though, which doesn't come up because this is an example of it, in Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta 95, the Chunky Sutta, where Buddha is talking with Kappatika, and he talks about prerequisites to this, which also lead to knowing and seeing. And basically that is, when he has investigated him and seen that he is purified from states based on delusion, then he places confidence in him. Filled with confidence, he visits him, pays respect to him. Having paid respect to him, he gives ear. When he gives ear, he hears the Dharma. Having heard the Dharma, he memorizes it, examines the meaning of the teaching he has memorized. When he examines their teaching, he gains reflective acceptance of those teachings. When he has gained reflective acceptance of those teachings, zeal springs up. When zeal has sprung up, he applies his will. Having applied his will, he scrutinizes. Having scrutinized, he strives. Resolutely striving, he realizes with the body the ultimate truth and sees it by penetrating it with wisdom. So in this sutta, Buddha is going through the whole process of becoming like a what they call a metta follower, which I believe is loving friendship, and then a confidence follower, then a Dharma follower. That's the one who's going and giving ear and listening and trying to understand the Dharma. Then he has a breakthrough like in the sutta that we just went through. But then ultimately that leads, having attained, I prefer hearing entry to stream entry, but because that's what he's doing. He's listening and he's understanding the Dharma and he breaks through to it. He goes all the way and then attains the ultimate knowing and seeing, nibbana. So, but this sutta is like an example of that. You know, here's the person coming and inquiring from the teacher and really focusing on what he's saying and understanding and penetrating it, right? And then he makes that breakthrough, right? Which now he's in a position to follow those instructions that the Buddha was giving here, you know, to attain that ultimate goal. Anyways, that's my view. I just thought I'd add that. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so this just a little about Prince Abhaya's backstory, which is sort of interesting. He's actually the brother of Prince Ajatasattu. They're the two sons of King Bimbisara. And if you know anything about Ajatasattu's story, he also appears in the suttas. He actually becomes king by killing his own father, King Bimbisara. So Prince Abhaya is the brother of Ajatasattu, who killed their father in order to become king. King Bimbisara had been a follower of the Buddha, and you know, even Ajatasattu goes to the Buddha afterwards and is looking for solace from him somehow. There's a famous sutta where he goes to the Buddha looking for something to calm his mind after he's committed this terrible crime. So I don't know in the timeline with Prince Abhaya here whether this is before or after those events, but anyway, this whole family has an interesting connection with the Buddha, and seems like Prince Abhaya, you know, maybe he's finding the peace here that his brother was not able to find. So yeah, but yeah, it's by going to those who know something and trying to listen to them, trying to learn from them, trying to apply the mind accordingly. This is how we learn. This is how we grow in the path. And you know, this is why the Buddha set up a monastic sangha. This is why the teachings could be passed down from person to person and maintained in the world. That this would remain possible for people, because it does often take some sort of human connection, as Richard is pointing out. Okay, I want to go to just to kind of summarize how is this all connected. I want to go to the Anapanasati Sutta. So this is the sutta on mindfulness of breathing. And I'm not going to go through the whole teaching on mindfulness of breathing today. I'm just going to focus on one section, which sort of ties this whole practice together. So the Buddha says, when mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it is very fruitful and beneficial. And he explains why is that. It's because when developed and cultivated, it fulfills the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation. It covers the body, the feelings, the mind, and the dhammas, the principles. If done in the style of the 16 steps, as is taught in the sutta, fulfills all kinds of mindfulness. And the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation, when developed and cultivated, fulfill the 7. And the 7 awakening factors, when developed and cultivated, fulfill knowledge and freedom. So this is the progression, that developing mindfulness fulfills the awakening factors, fulfilling the awakening factors fulfills knowledge and freedom. And you know, last week we looked with Sayadaw Jagara, we looked at the Metta Sahagata Sutta, which says also the 4 Brahma Viharas can be developed in conjunction with the awakening factors, and that this can lead us to awakening. So it's like each of these different meditation practices or techniques, so just the basic, you know, the awareness, the mindfulness, also the Brahma Viharas, they're pointing us towards the awakening factors in a way, and the awakening factors are what is onward leading ultimately to awakening. The Buddha gives a little more exposition about this below. So he says, the mindfulness of breathing fulfills mindfulness meditation, which fulfills the awakening factors, which fulfills knowledge and freedom. And he explains the 16 steps of mindfulness of breathing, which we can look at some other time, and we have looked at in the past. I'm sure some of you are familiar. So the Buddha explains that mindfulness of breathing can be developed and cultivated to fulfill the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation, the different steps. Look at the body, or look at the feelings, or look at the mind, or look at the dhammas, the principles. And okay, here's the one I want to look at. How are the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation developed and cultivated so as to fulfill the 7 awakening factors? Whenever a mendicant meditates by observing an aspect of the body, at that time their mindfulness is established and lucid. At such a time, a mendicant develop it and perfect it. So this is basic and obvious enough that when you establish mindfulness, then the awakening factor of mindfulness is there. That's something that's sort of easy that we can start with, at least, quite easily. So then we have to develop and perfect it. As they live mindfully in this way, they investigate, explore, and inquire into that principle with wisdom. So yes, when we're living with mindfulness, then yeah, I guess I talked about this earlier. This is sort of the linear exposition that Daniel had brought up. That if you are being mindful, then it's natural to start to investigate your experience, to try to understand it. They investigate, explore, and inquire into that principle with wisdom. By being clear on what's happening, then you have the opportunity to develop your wisdom about what and why and how. At such a time, a mendicant has initiated the awakening factor of investigation of principles. They develop it and perfect it. As they investigate principles with wisdom in this way, their energy is roused up and unflagging. At such a time, a mendicant has initiated the awakening factor of energy. They develop it and perfect it. When their energetic rapture not of the flesh arises, at such a time, a mendicant has initiated the awakening factor of rapture. They develop it and perfect it. When the mind is full of rapture, the body and mind become tranquil. At such a time, a mendicant has initiated the awakening factor of tranquility. They develop it and perfect it. When the body is tranquil and they feel bliss, the mind becomes immersed in samadhi. At such a time, a mendicant has initiated the awakening factor of immersion. They develop it and perfect it. They closely watch over that mind immersed in samadhi. At such a time, a mendicant has initiated the awakening factor of equanimity. They develop it and perfect it. So this whole progression can happen with mindfulness of the body. And the Buddha says the same thing. He repeats this whole thing for feelings. Mindfulness of feelings can also lead to this whole progression with the awakening factors. Mindfulness of the mind can lead to this whole progression with the awakening factors. Mindfulness of principles, dhammas, can lead to this whole progression of the awakening factors. That's how the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation, when developed and cultivated, fulfill the 7 awakening factors. And how are the 7 awakening factors developed and cultivated so as to fulfill knowledge and freedom? So this is sort of taking off from Prince Abhaya's question. He said, how do we know and see? The Buddha said, well, you develop the awakening factors. And here's a little more exposition about how that process works. How are they developed and cultivated so as to fulfill knowledge and freedom? It's when a mendicant develops the awakening factors of mindfulness, investigation of principles, energy, rapture, tranquility, immersion, and equanimity. And here's that part. We already talked about this, but this is the part that leads to the knowledge and freedom. It's the relying on seclusion, fading away, cessation, and letting go. last portion, the letting go. I think really the ripening is letting go. That's how the 7 awakening factors, when developed and cultivated, fulfill knowledge and vision, knowledge and freedom. Sorry. That is what the Buddha said. That moved. So then this hopefully is what we've been doing. Hopefully that while we've been practicing awareness and the Brahmaviharas during this retreat time, we've had some experience of the arising of the awakening factors, some experience of hindrances at least reducing, if not entirely disappearing, and some experience of awakening factors arising, even if not coming to full development and perfection. This is something we should see in our meditation over time, little by little, drop by drop. And that's, I don't know, hopefully that's why we're here, that we want to learn to do that. With the understanding that this is how we move away from suffering. As a number of you said you wish to move away from suffering. Well, here's how. And really so much gratitude to the Buddha for telling us, because it's confusing. We don't know and see necessarily unless somebody tells us, as Richard pointed out. So we have a few minutes left. Are there any last questions, comments, sharing? Daniel?
I was wondering, just more request really. The winter retreat materials that you kind of started linking in the emails, the different Vipassana talks and also the different book recommendations, those are great. And I wonder if maybe in the future, as these are identified by you or by others or whatever, if they couldn't be kind of shared out in the email, because that was really helpful to find different authors and different stuff that I hadn't heard of before. So,
okay, well, for that we have to express our gratitude to Adimuti, who shared those materials, and I think she's full of recommendations. Kind of her specialty, so we'll see if she's willing to share. Share a list of interesting books. Yeah, why don't you share a list of interesting books? All right. Yes. Any other comments, questions?
Just expressing gratitude. Glad to remember the 7 factors of awakening and to remember how important their cultivation is, and to be in community together with others who have similar interest and aspiration, and to have teachings and teachers and to be live with each other. It's just a great blessing.
Sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much for expressing that. And yeah, maybe this is a good segue for me to express my appreciation and gratitude for everyone who has participated together during this retreat time. Those who've joined these programs, those who have supported us in material ways or Dhamma ways. Yeah, it's always, anything that happens in a monastery is a group endeavor. It's an opportunity to see the interconnection between all of us. And yeah, just how grateful I feel to be able to live on the generosity of others, not because I deserve it, but because I get to rejoice in everybody's goodness. And so I want to appreciate and name that. Ananea?
Well, thank you, Aya, because this is always, it takes a lot of dedication and effort to be in charge of sutta study and the meditation programs for these last 3 months. So sadhu, 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 and special thanks to Aya Adimuti, who will soon be leaving and going on to further retreat. So thanks so much for her efforts as well.
Yeah, very much so. And thank you to all of you. And yes, some of you who joined in person with us here. Good to see you also online. So I think in closing, I'd like to first take a moment to dedicate the merits of this time of practice together. And so, we take refuge in the Buddha and the Dhamma and the Sangha with trust that they will carry us through to awakening. And I just really want to rejoice in the Buddha's example, in the Dhamma that we've had the opportunity to learn together, and in everybody sort of coming together in this support of the Sangha during this time. May that be for your awakening, our awakening. May that be for everybody's welfare and benefit. And may we experience that knowledge and freedom and, nibbana as we've seen in these suttas today. So, dedicating our merits for ourselves, for everyone here, for all beings, to experience that awakening and deep well-being. Irang no ponyang aswakayo hotu. Irang no ponyang magapalanya nasa hotu. Irang no ponyang nibbana sapachayo hotu. So, may the merits done by us lead to the end of the defilements. May the merits done by us lead to the path and fruits. And may the merits done by us lead to the arising of Nibbana, be a condition for that. All right, we can do our final closing by paying our respects together to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagawa Buddhang Bhagawantang Abhivademi. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
All right. So thank you all for joining, and to see you next time.